You're thinking of moving to Boise, Idaho. That makes sense. Boise, Idaho has been ranked the #2 city in the country to live in 2024. And then from 2020 to now, most Boise suburbs were in the top 10 for fastest growing cities. But there are some things people don't tell you. So in this video, I'm going to talk about all of the things people aren't prepared for and a few things that people were told, but there's definitely some wrong information about moving to Boise, Idaho. So let's get into it. My name is Brady Fagel. I'm a Boise local and a real estate agent. Reach out if you have any questions. But as a local and a realtor, I have both local experience and experience with people moving here, which can create some bias. I am sure of that, but it also gives me a unique perspective on both sides of the coin. I'm going to keep this video as informational as possible and remain unbiased because my goal with this entire channel is to help people make the most informed decision for their family, because moving to Boise, Idaho is not for everyone. And there are things people really should be aware of. One of which is the most important for many of you who are moving to Boise, and we will definitely talk about that and go over that at the end. Now, the first thing has to do with the beauty of Idaho. This is something where most people think Idaho is a big, beautiful state with lots of mountains, with trees everywhere and miles of rivers. They watch videos and see gorgeous drone shots or photography of the Sawtooth Mountains or the Frank Church Wilderness. But when you live in Boise, that is not the case, and I will explain. Many people who visit Boise realize quickly that Boise itself is not like magazines. We're close to the areas that are those magazine cover views, but most of the Treasure Valley is flat desert land. We have the mountains in the city of Boise, and you have a mountain view there. But for the most part, it is just flat farmland with brown grass covering the mountains and the foothills. The sections with the Boise River and then some of those rolling foothills are still beautiful, but not what I think some people are expecting when they move here. Most of the greenery and the trees are in the city center of Boise. And I actually had someone moving here who they came to visit Boise, and after visiting decided that because of exactly what I just talked about, they didn't want to move here. They wanted a place that had those magazine cover views, which is where a place like northern Idaho can come into play. There are more trees and lakes and a more accurate representation of what I think people probably think when they imagine Idaho and what they're told. Whereas the side of Boise that you see is something that people are just not aware of. They're not told, and they do not know until they get here that is what they get themselves into. Which, even if you are moving up north to northern Idaho, or even like Idaho Falls, where it's really beautiful and there's more trees and mountains there, I'm happy to help with that. Like I said, my goal is to help you move to the best place for you, even if that isn't Boise. Now, if you do choose Boise and you want a prettier landscape, sections like Hidden Springs, which are up in the foothills, or Avamore, or the north end of Boise, is where you can live in some of the most beautiful parts of Boise. Hidden Springs is tucked away in the foothills. You feel like you're in a mountain town. It's also right next to Avamore that I mentioned. And then the north end is just outside of downtown Boise. This is a really popular spot with some of the best views here in the valley. Another side of this is that people will tell you Idaho is just full of potatoes and potato farms with potato stores, which makes sense because Idaho is most known for its potatoes. We even have a giant potato drop for New Year's Eve. And as you will quickly find out when you get to Boise, this is not the case at all. You honestly might not even see one potato farm when you come to visit Boise. The next one is traffic, which is simple, but it lends to a much bigger problem that people don't know about that has to do with traffic. But first, with the traffic itself, I harp on this because some people just don't believe it. They don't realize how crowded it can get here. Because Boise has grown so fast, it has created a ton of crowded cities and streets, even in the smaller towns and suburbs of Boise. You'll be dealing with the traffic. You'll get stuck at lights for 10 minutes, and people think that they can move to a place like Star, Idaho, and live in a small, quiet town. but then they get here and are dealing with crowded streets as if they lived in a bigger city like the bigger suburb of Meridian here in Boise. Which in Meridian, it definitely has some of the worst traffic in Boise, but this all lends to that bigger issue that I'm talking about. The traffic is bad because of the growth and the lack of planning, and the planning in Boise is horrible. It's not just because of the roads and the traffic. And Kuna, Idaho has been one of the suburbs to plan best for everything. They don't have the traffic every other place has. It's not nearly as bad. They did a much better job of planning for not only the streets, but they did a great job of developing the city. But Boise often feels like they just kind of built whatever, wherever. There is no master plan. Many of the shops and parks are in one area, and then all of the homes and stuff are in another area. So you don't have the best, like, cohesive cities where everything kind of works together. There are some developers coming into Boise and creating master plan communities and doing a better job of this, but overall the city planning in Boise is not great. We could use parks and homes and shops to come together in a little bit better way. We also have areas like Boise where you will have mobile homes and apartment complexes and then million-dollar townhomes right next door to each other because of some of the zoning issues in Boise. You can pretty much build anything anywhere. And people aren't really talking about some of these things where this cohesive feel with these master plan communities doesn't really come together. My name is Brady Fagel, like I said, and if you are thinking about moving to Idaho, before we get into some of these more major things that people aren't talking about, shoot me a text or a call anytime. My goal is to help you make the best decision for you and your family and help find you the best place to live. And if you have found any value in this video or any of the other videos, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out and it helps you not miss any of the videos that I do every week. Plus, if you subscribe and you trust me enough to reach out to me for questions, you deserve to have me be your agent, not anyone on my team. You get to work with me. Now, this next one is a big change in the last 5 years, and it has to do with the home prices. But there are aspects that people are just not aware of when it comes to home prices. The obvious side of this is that home prices in Boise have gone up. Much of that is because of you guys moving here, to the point to where the median home price has gone up almost $200,000, and then more than $200,000 in some areas. When people think of moving to Boise, a lot of them aren't fully aware of just how expensive it is to move here. They have the old articles and rumors still in their head. I've had people not move to Boise because they didn't realize how expensive it was here. And I've had people move here then call me and say, hey, I moved to Boise from California to be able to afford a home, but it's not much different here. So people just don't realize how expensive it has gotten in Boise. Then there's another side to this, but I'll give you the rough cost of homes here first. If you are a first-time home buyer or looking to buy a starter home, you will be spending a minimum of $350,000. If you want to be in some of the nicer suburbs, that goes up to $400,000 for a starter home. And then for the rest of you, a typical home in a nice area with, your standard 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, kind of your standard second or third home, this will range from $500,000 to $700,000 on average. But where people really get confused is when they want land. All of this misconception is from when Boise used to be more affordable. People moved up here to buy an acre of land with a beautiful home for $400,000. This is not the case, and no one talks about this or tells the people the reality here, or some people just don't listen. Because if you want a home with land, and if you want that home to be a newish home that does not need renovations, your budget is going to start at $750,000 and go up from there, with most homes on an acre or even half of an acre above the $1 million mark. I've had far too many people not realize how expensive it is to buy a home on land here. So many people they call or they think, I'll move to Boise and I'll buy some land and live along the mountains. Or I often hear, what are you looking for? And they say, oh, I'd love some land, but we just don't have the prices that we used to have. And even Emmett, which is a more affordable suburb an hour away from Boise, it's going up to be a starting price of $650,000 or more like $700,000. So it's not even that much more affordable with the land that's ready to go and has a nice house that you don't need to renovate. Another side to the home prices in Boise that people don't talk about is people might move here and be prepared for the housing costs, because Boise can still be very affordable for many of you. But they have remote jobs and they forget to think about what will happen if they lose that high-paying remote job. The salaries in Boise have only increased by 13% in the last 5 years, and even back then, it was still not keeping up with home prices. And home prices have gone up 50% or more in that same time, as well as the interest rates going up in the last couple of years. So it's got even more expensive. So make sure you understand home prices in Boise can be a big challenge and something that a lot of people just don't fully prepare for. The next thing people aren't told is a wide range of things relating to the environment. And then we will get into probably the most important topic, especially for a lot of you. But this one I will start with the winters in Boise. Most people are told it's cold and snowy here, which is to be expected, but that's not the problem with winter here. First of all, winter gets overblown here sometimes. For those of you moving here, Boise winters are very mild. It's usually in the mid 30s to low 40 degrees for a month or two. We only have around 5 to 10 days in a year that have an inch of snow or more, and usually that snow melts by the next day. The real struggle for people are the inversions. Think of Seattle and how gloomy and cloudy it can be there for days. Now imagine it's 20 to 30 degrees and the sun goes down at 4:45 p.m. and it doesn't come up till 8 a.m. the next day. And these inversions, they're caused by the clouds getting stuck in the valley, and then usually that lasts around 3 days or so. But sometimes we will get ones that last for 2 weeks, and sometimes if it's a really bad year, we might get a 2-week one with a couple-day break and then another one that lasts a week. And it can get depressing. It is not easy for everyone, and this is all part of that misconception on winter in Boise. Too much focus, I think, is on the cold and the snow, which is very mild. If you live up in northern Idaho or Pocatello and Idaho Falls, you will be dealing with a lot more of that snow and cold than you will in Boise. Another part of this misconception comes with people being told they need a 4-wheel drive vehicle. As much as that is a nice thing to have in the wintertime here, you will be perfectly fine with a 2-wheel drive vehicle. Shoot, my guy, Jason, who does all of my inspections, he drives a Prius and does inspections in it all winter long. Even when we got a foot of snow last year, and he was fine. And guess what? I drive an old beat up gold Prius and I get around just fine. So just be aware of the darkness in the winter with those inversions and realize you don't need a 4-wheel drive vehicle. On the opposite side of the the winter is the summers in Boise. It can also be much hotter than people expect. It will be in the high 90s and 100 degrees for pretty much all of July. And then sometimes that can last into August. But the worst part of it is when we get a bad smoke year like we had this year. You can't go outside. It makes you feel like crap because of the horrible air quality. It kind of kicks up your allergies, which is another issue with Boise. And again, this is something where I had someone moving to Boise, and when they visited, it was smoky, and they went from being excited to move here to completely removing Boise from their places to live. Now, this last one is a big one, and it's a fun one, but to most of you moving here, it's probably one of the most important and a big part of why you're thinking of moving to a place like Idaho. And it's another one that most people are not told the full story, or sometimes people are kind of scared to go into some of the details. And I've touched on this in a lot of the other videos, but it is the politics in Boise. Now, many of you have been told in videos and articles similar to this how Republican Idaho is, that it's a state that bleeds red, which is true, but there is something that many people leave out on the other side of the aisle. Idaho is a very, very red state. You will see Trump flags and signs in people's yards, on the back of trucks. If you visit Star, Idaho outside of Boise, you will see a Trump sign or a flagpole with a first responder flag or an American flag on every single home. People here absolutely love their guns. At the store the other day, I was actually in Kuna where I live, and they were selling tannerite in a candy bar kind of style display at the front entrance of Ace Hardware. It was almost as casual as just, I'll grab a pack of gum as you check out. And tannerite is an explosive target for those of you who don't know. So people in Idaho love their guns and they love going to shoot them. They will also be carrying firearms. You'll likely see pistols on someone's hip, and most people you meet will just have it where you can't see it. Idaho also recently passed a law where teachers must refer to students by their gender given at birth, and it protects the teachers from any lawsuits or issues that arise from them not wanting to use pronouns that come later on. So you can see that Idaho is very red, but in Boise, and in particular the city of Boise itself, there are Democratic leanings. You will see pride flags on a lot of houses. You will see them in businesses, and you can go look at the city of Boise's Instagram or the Boise mayor's Instagram and see some of the Democratic changes Boise is seeing. I know many people who are moving to Boise for political relief, so this topic is super important to them. And then I know people on the other side who are moving to Boise and are worried about how red the state is. And by just going with the data, 62% of people moving here are Republican. So Idaho looks to be getting more red. But the city of Boise seems to be getting more blue. And largely this is because people tend to move where they feel comfortable. And many Democratic people choose to live in the city of Boise. And then the Republican people moving here tend to find their way to the smaller suburbs. Now, is this something to worry about on either side of the aisle? I'll just put it this way. Boise, in my opinion, and looking at the data, will never be a Portland or a Seattle or a Denver. If it does, that would be insane to me, and it wouldn't happen for at least 20 years. So just expect the city of Boise to be a little bit more left-leaning and the suburbs of Boise to remain very red, with Meridian and Eagle being a little bit more moderate, and the outer suburbs like Star and Kuna voting almost 80% red. With Boise as a whole, no matter the suburbs, still being a large, major conservative place to live. But if you are looking for that small town feel, you need to watch this video here where I go through the top 5 small towns in the Boise area and give you everything you need to know on those small towns to help you with your decision to move to Boise. Thank you guys for watching. I look forward to meeting you in person.